Hello, everybody. Welcome. Come on in as usual. Come and sit around in a circle. It's just me this week. And oh, goodness, what a week I have had. So we were talking last week about receiving, being open to receiving and accepting whatever you're being given and receiving it and actually putting it into good use. So I thought I would share with you what I've been receiving this week and see what resonates with you. I'm going to tell you some stories about Christian and I, about our very early healing. I'm going to tell you about love. I'm going to tell you about forgiveness. We're going to talk about knowing yourself and like purpose and why we're here. And several things have happened this week. I've been joining a new course. I've done an activation this week, and I've received some new books in the post. So I want to share those all with you as well, because they are all linking together. I'm hoping you're hearing me fine. I've got a fuzzy sound coming through my mic, and I'm lagging on the film that we're making at the same time, which has never happened before, and it might all be explained by what's happened to me this week. So there's lots of energy and new frequencies that have come in this week. Okay, so I don't know really where to start. I think I need to start. We've talked about before where I was when the search for Christian didn't work on social media, and I've talked about the sort of state that I was in and the fact that I was asking for help, and that's when I sort of started to receive help. I was in a state of I so wanted to find Christian that my energy was all over the place. I was searching. I was like a scattergun approach almost, when your energy is just not focused. And I was sort of throwing this energy around, and it wasn't pretty. And you might know people in your life who you're affected by their sort of energy being scattered, and they're never really aware of the effect that they have on people around them. I work with lots of clients who have difficult relationships within their families, and there is always an element of somebody not really being aware of how their energy and their actions and their behaviors inflict on others, what they impart on others. And in that case, you have to really just accept if you can't change them and you can't do anything about the situation sort of physically, it's almost a case that you just have to understand and acknowledge that, you know, you just have to keep yourself safe or not get dragged into other people's drama. But I was in that state of people were getting dragged into my drama, and I wasn't fully aware of the effect I was having on other people by going off to search for Christian again. It was something I was doing for myself. And, you know, anybody who tried to stop me or get in the way, I was like, no, this is what I have to do. And yeah, I mean, it affected a lot of people, and not in a good way. and it wasn't affecting me in a good way either. So that kind of has to be said first of all. So when I recognized that I had to stop, I had to stop the world, essentially. I had to stop the world. I recognized what I was doing and what the situation was doing to me. And I had to choose a different way. I had to I had to be responsible for my behavior and responsible for my reality. And to do that meant doing some, actually at the time, it was emotional freedom technique, which is like tapping. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of listeners will have heard of this. I did 4 sessions of that, and I did it with this medium that I was working with at the time. At that time, the medium that I was working with was a complete rock for me, especially with this early part of my just finding out what was really buried underneath all my emotions and behaviors. So really what my thoughts were. And this is all part of the knowing yourself. We'll go into a bit more detail about it at first. But I think I'm being shown this to tell you, because it was the first time that I realized really what was my underlying emotions. So I was trying to find my brother. For me, it felt like the love, you know, I was doing this out of love, and that it was going to be reciprocated and we would come back together. But what is usually always the case, actually, is when you're searching, you're striving, when things aren't working, when you know, you're always fighting to get things done, you're getting hurt, and other people are getting hurt at the same time. Can you achieve your goals in a different way without all the drama? And for me, and for my part of the story, it was really about stopping the world and really understanding what was going on in my thoughts. As I said, I did these sessions, and I don't know if I'm going to, maybe I should be saying this to you. So when you're doing, if you're wanting to know what your thoughts are behind something, you're always going to find the answers inside. You don't need to look for external external reasons. They're all going to be inside of you. And for me, what was stopping Christian at that point from coming towards me and actually us realizing that he was actually dead was my belief. It was a limiting belief, and it was the belief that Christian wasn't going to come home. And that really surprised me. It shocked me, and I was incredibly angry that I had this limiting belief that he wouldn't come home. I also had this limiting belief was linked to events that happened in our childhood, which I've already talked about. When I was 8 years old, Christian was taken away. What I felt was Christian was taken away from me to go to a different school. So we'd had such a close bond, and my whole world sort of turned upside down when he was taken away to school. I had incredible anger that I didn't realize towards him for leaving me, which he was only, 7 years old when he went to a different school. But for me, I was incredibly angry with him for even doing that. And it was from a child's point of view, I was left on my own. And I was distraught. I was literally distraught. And actually looking back at it, I started to develop like facial tics and like swallowing a lot. And I nobody around me realized at the time what that was, and I didn't realize either, but it was my body, I guess, my body's way of dealing with this trauma that I was going through. So I was angry towards Christian, and I was also incredibly angry with our parents for taking him away. So yeah, there was a lot of anger that was buried, and I think you're going to listen to this and it's going to resonate with you or not. Take for the whole of this episode, actually take what you need from it. So a lot of the first work that I had to do was to forgive Christian, to forgive my parents, to forgive me as a child for having these thoughts, because the effect of all of this was that I withheld my love towards Christian, because we're towards everybody, and actually in a degree, because I never wanted to get that hurt again. There was a defense, there was definitely a defense that was put up. And a lot of this was, and then again, age 13, Christian then went full boarding. So he literally, I remember it to the day, him being in the car with all his stuff. We've actually just gone through a load of his stuff, and I found his big trunk and his big, his like big massive trunk that he had all his stuff in. And I remember him just being driven away and just being heartbroken. Oh, it makes me start now. That he'd gone in the car away to full board. And again, there was another layer of, this is getting even worse. He's now gone to a different school and he's full boarding, and that anger was never resolved. But through the early healing that I did, again, I realized, I had to release that trauma and those feelings and thoughts that were inside of me, which had been trapped in me. But also I had to understand from Christian's point of view, because he was showing me in the early stages that he was in this car, he was being taken away. It was not something that he wanted to do. He was sort of trapped in the same, we were both experiencing the same thing. And I, as a child, didn't take on board his feelings. So I think what I need to say is, and what you probably need to take away from this, is that when there's drama and there's chaos and you can't seem to heal or get the results that you want, you just need to look at a deeper level, because there's all sorts of thoughts that are stuck and they're stagnant and they sit in your body. So I had to do a lot of forgiveness around these things that happen in our early childhood, because they reflected on what was happening to me at that time when I was trying to search for Christian. So we got rid of this limiting belief that he would never return. And the love was able to, I've got this, you won't be able to see it if you're obviously listening to the podcast, but this is my journal. It's a fat old journal where I had been the early stages of my healing, when I was going through this work with Christian. And we actually got to, I'll just describe what actually happened to me during these sessions. So the final part was me and myself at 13 years old, giving forgiveness for Christian for leaving me alone, as I thought, and like forgiveness for me for not wanting to confront the pain that I felt back then. I didn't know how to confront it. I didn't know what to do with it. And it was all down to me really forgiving Christian for everything, like for going to school, which was not his fault, but for going to Africa. And, I'd really withheld a lot of my love for him or to him during that time, because I just did not want to be hurt, and it was a recurrent thing. And even as an adult, there was an element of withholding a part of my love for Christian, because it was just too painful. But I realized I had to be brave, and I had to be strong, and I had to give this love. I had to forgive, and I had to give this love out through, we were talking about that the other week, giving love out through the front of my heart. And to do this was forgiveness. And eventually Christian and I, in the visions that I was having, we actually walked through a door together, which was labeled forgiveness for everything. And Christian and I walked through it, him as a 13-year-old, me as a 13-year-old. And on the other side of this door was the adult Christian. And I've just said here, he's in his beige woolly jumper, with, you know, his curly hair tied up. He was always buying clothes from a charity shop before it was a cool thing to do. And he held my hand while we stood in front of one another, and we just smiled at each other and said that we loved each other. And then you know, he forgave me, I forgave him, and it was like, I'd written here, it's like a true love, like an totally unconditional love that we had between us at that point. And we kissed each other on the cheek, and we actually walked off along this pathway, his arm over my shoulder and mine around his waist. And after I'd come out of that sort of vision, I felt complete relief that I had reconnected with Christian, because while I was doing the sort of social media search for him, the focus had been on almost like an abstract Chris, like I knew he was my brother, but when you see the pictures of him, his missing posters, and it was almost like he wasn't real. Whereas doing this forgiveness and allowing the love to flow freely between us, he became real again. I could feel him. I could really, yeah, it's just like we totally reconnected to each other as we had done as children. And that was absolutely transformational, so transformational. After that time, I was then very sure that we would find each other again. And then I talked last week about doing a ritual where I actually handed over finding of Christian to a higher power. But if we hadn't done the love and the forgiveness at that point, asking and handing over that power, we would have had to have done the love and forgiveness at some point, but we did it then before handing over the finding of him. So in between that session and then actually finding Christian, the guidance that I got from Spirit was just a few words. It was get to know yourself. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? I'm now free of searching for Christian. I now have to get to know myself. I'd obviously done a part of that with the sessions that I'd done in terms of really understanding what was going on in my head and what my beliefs were. But there was so much more to it. So I discovered, so when someone tells you to like go and know yourself, that's something that goes back, well, if you look on the internet about know thyself, that goes back to Greek Socrates, who sort of was saying that as advice, know yourself, and it's on the temple of Apollo in Delphi. And I didn't know what to do about that. I mean, how do you know yourself? You know yourself as your labels. You're a mum, you're a wife, you're a sister, you're a daughter. You play a role in life. You have a job, or you're in part of the community. You have a role in your community. There's a lot more that you need to find and you need to uncover a lot. So essentially, we are all love. We're all light initially. When we're born into the world, we're on a high vibration. But as life goes on, and as we are in our childhood, as events happen, as the cultural norms, you learn the culture, you learn how society works, you know, you get your edges knocked off as it is, you know, school and yeah, parents, church, maybe wherever you are, community, you fit into a role that everybody recognizes. So you're sort of you work in a civilized society where things are ordered, where anybody who's a bit different or who does different things, it's not so bad now. We are encouraged more to be, children are definitely encouraged more to be themselves, and more certainly our local school is anyway. But at the time, we all fit into certain roles and models, and everything sort of gets clouded and gunky is the technical term for it. And it's the same with Christian and I, that pure love, it was gunked up over the years. So essentially, knowing yourself is actually, from my point of view, it has been uncovering all the layers of gunk that I had accumulated myself. So that goes into like what your true feelings are about things. We talked about this, you know, you might be, grief can often, if you're in a state of grief at the moment, there are lots of emotions attached to that, but anger is definitely in there. Sadness, isolations, feeling of abandonment. You know, I think I wrote something with Spirit. I don't think it was with Christian, but essentially all of fear and grief, and that root of it is abandonment. So with Christian, obviously, that was the root of my worldview totally changing, that feeling of being abandoned. And I think a lot of we all do at some point in our childhood. We all feel abandoned, whether we get lost in a supermarket, I don't know, whether it's our parents who we feel abandoned by in certain ways, you know, friends who send you to Coventry, who don't talk to you because of something you've done. You know, we all feel that abandonment. We all know what that feels like, and we do everything in our power to not feel that. Yeah, so there's lots of true feelings that are we maybe don't want to recognize, or we just don't know they're there because they're at a subconscious level. We take on so much of things that we aren't actually. So maybe, for example, as a child, you were told that I don't know, you'll never amount to anything, or you're not clever, or you're not talented, you can't sing, you can't do whatever, and you actually take on these things when actually you can sing, and when actually, if you're put in the right position, you can excel at some, you know, whatever it is you choose to excel at. So it's almost like removing the layers of things that you aren't. Another way about knowing yourself is, there's a lovely book actually, and this was the first book that ever, I was actually in Oxfam and I was looking for, I can't remember what I was looking for, but this book called Women Who Run with Wolves, Contacting the Power of the Wild Woman. It's by Clarissa Pinkola Estas, and she talks about the howl, the resurrection of the wild woman, and she calls the wolf, it's actually the wolf woman, La Loba, and it's all about like really finding the bones of you. And she actually says, go gather the bones. It's like really it's like strip away everything that isn't yours, everything that you've been culturally given, socially given, by family, friends, everything. Like strip it all off when you're lost and really go back to the bare bones of you. really, what are you? And when you start to ask that question, and you sit in quietness and you use your intuition, and there's a lot to do with singing, I'm getting, like really expressing yourself, how you want to express yourself. You will start to find the bare bones. It'll be like, what did you love doing as a child? What did you like playing, like being wild again, doing, like being in nature, all that kind of wild stuff. Like go and do that and really find out yourself again. I know there's lots of rewilding retreats and things that are around, well, are starting up again now, I guess. But actually I did a session. It was really interesting. I spent a day, it was on a day course. I spent a day being animal. So we were in the woods and we were listening and acting, almost pretending we were being animals, and what we would be using our instincts essentially. And that was a really, really interesting exercise, and opened my eyes to so many different ways where I had not been myself. So that was really interesting. We've talked before about finding your powers and your gifts. Again, actually that's been pointed to tell you about this. There's another book that actually came through the post today. I've talked about Rebecca Campbell before. This is her new book, Letters to a Starseed, and it says it's messages and activations for remembering who you are and why you came here. And I got it in the post today, and I just opened it at one page because that's what I do usually if I need a bit of inspiration. And actually Rebecca's books are brilliant because they're done in sort of short chapters, page almost by a page. So you just open the book where you need some inspiration, and I do that all the time with books. I'll look along a bookshelf and a book will be like flashing at me and I'll just open the book randomly and there'll be a message there for me. Anyway, I opened this book and it fell open onto the pages where Rebecca's talking about starseed roles. Starseeds, this is all part of what's been coming in for me this week, so I won't talk about it too much here, but she's talking about all the different ways that we come to this life with a purpose in mind, and some of the roles that we play. So I'll just read through these. There's activator, where you ignite change in the world. There's alchemist, where you turn anything that's stuck, stagnant and heavy into gold. There's the artist, where you're dreaming a new world into being through your creations. There's the birther, where you're here to usher in new worlds and ways of doing things. There's the challenger. The challenger sees differently and they're here to dismantle systems and open people's minds. There's a grid worker, where you're called to particular parts of the planet to be a guardian for the crystalline grid of the earth. There's healers. Healers see the wholeness in people, things and situations, and you hold that vision of wholeness so that others are able to see that too. There's a midwife, so you're part of a support team. You're here to help other starseeds to create lasting change in the world. And there's space holder, where you're here to be holding force in the world. Your presence alone changes things energetically. And there's the visionary, this big picture thinkers, visionaries who can see patterns and the shifts needed to usher in a new world. So these are like a new, so you might think you're here as a say an artist just doing your own work, whatever calls to you, but actually it might well be that when you know yourself and you really dig into knowledge and you ask the questions, you actually find that you're here to do something very specific as an artist, as a creator, and you actually have come here to either change the world or to help other people change the world or to create your own creations. There's a reason why you've come here. So that was powers or gifts, and also how you've been shaped by the collective. So like COVID is a really good example of that, of how you know, you might be living in a sort of fearful energy at the moment because of what's going on in the news, what's being fed to you, what your you know, that sort of fearful hum that's going on around. In fact, it's not a hum, because I see hum as love, as a hum as love, but you know, there's this maybe crackling interference, this like fear that's not a nice sound, almost a frequency that's around. You're picking up on that. Yeah, so there's all these things that you to know yourself on so many different levels, and to open your mind to really what it is, who you are, and what it is you're here to do. And actually something interesting came into my mind. I don't know if anyone's read a book called Power versus Force by David Hawkins. And this is actually talking about the collective, but he talks about a map of consciousness, and how your frequency, how your energy from what you're giving out, how that impacts your reality. And he sort of talks about shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear, desire, anger, and pride being the sort of low frequencies. So they're sort of heavy, which will then also attract those kind of energies towards you. Whereas if you go, if you step through into courage, where you make a decision to change your reality, is essentially what it is. You make a choice to decide what life you are going to have and what experience you're going to have in life. So then you start to, yeah, the courage is the big thing where you take the leap. That's the pivotal point of change, is the courage. And when you've got the courage, you then move into this sort of neutrality, and as you're going up, you go to willingness, you go to acceptance, you go to reason, you go to love, you go to joy, and then anything very high vibration is a sort of enlightenment. And that is when life like totally kicks in. And I've been working my way up through all of these sort of, yeah, working my way through this map of consciousness. And a lot of that has been about removing stuff that isn't mine, that I've, and also working through healing and getting to that point where the hum of pure love. And I actually had an experience this week. I was walking, my family, we've got this new puppy, and we were walking around the field, and there's the field, the dairy cows are right next to the fence. A few nights ago, actually, they were right by the fence. And as we were walking up to them, you could start to hear, literally, you could hear a hum. And they were quite tightly packed together because they're in strict grazing, so they're kind of restricted into how much of the field they have. And I thought, oh, that's just me hearing that hum. But actually, my husband, who's not spiritual at all, and my children all went, oh my God, I can hear that hum. Now, all of these dairy cows, they're all female, obviously, being dairy cows. But I've worked on dairy farms for many years, and you know, agriculture is my background. And all of that herd is going to be mothers, daughters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces. I think I've covered, and granddaughters, yeah, grandmothers. I think I've covered everything. But I came away from it. My thought was, that is a hum of love. You could hear this humming. They were all in union. They were all close together. There was no, you know, they had their sort of, you could obviously see they had their favorites. They were in sort of clumps of favorites. Family groups as well, probably, but there was this hum. And so much about what I've received this week has been about this unconditional love, and I have felt it coming into my back so much this week. And I did an activation this week, actually with Natasha Harris, who was on, I'm thinking episode 11. She was talking about the Akashic records and past lives and things like that. And I did a activation with her this week. And what came through for me from that was actually a return to that state of unconditional love that I had with Christian once we had worked through all the limiting beliefs and the forgiveness and the understanding. And that unconditional love, that hum between people, and it's unseen, you know, it, as Hawkins says, you know, that love, it just vibrates and the energy attracts in. And that is essentially how Christian and I came together again, with him in spirit, me in the physical, but it was because of unconditional love. If we hadn't got our unconditional love sorted, we could have been, well, we would have never have found each other again. And this came through this week. Like I had obviously since I mean, I've spent 3 years now since finding Christian. I've accumulated some judgment, and actually our relationship has totally evolved over those 3 years. But there was some gunk that has come up, and I actually saw it as a black ball of like loose like threads, not big bits, but just little bits of fluff, almost like put together and into it was shiny, it was like a shiny black ball, and I just handed it over. I released this little bit of fluff that's been accumulating for a few years between Christian and I, and that allowed for the love to be clear again. And yeah, it came rushing into my back, and literally I was also given it into my heart space in return for releasing that little bit of gunk. I literally got this amplified love. It was almost like somebody had put a new heart in. Or like if you have we have a basement pump to pump water out of our basement. I mean, it's furnished, but if there's any excess water, it gets pumped out. And we put an extra pump on, so like a standby pump, and it's almost like that I was given a standby heart or an amplification heart this week, and it has taken Christian and I, our sort of connection and our love, to a new level. That's essentially what's happened this week. It's been quite incredible. I'm just almost getting used to it, but I've also received deeper like psychic skills and higher, and like allowed my intuitive to develop, and certain things have happened this week which I am quite shocked with, that I've been able to intuit. So there's a sort of extra layer, things are coming in, and they're going to be used for what's happening next. And I've always talked about, you know, the lost belongings that are coming back to Christian. You know, it's been 18 years, but these objects of his camera, you know, we're going to get pictures, essentially Christian's belongings back. I've always said I don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but like it's going to happen very soon. And there's going to be a lot of disbelief around it, like how could these items have come back to us or back to me? But all I can say is that they come back to us, and I have, you know, I really do feel they've already come back. I really feel that I can see like a gift, and I can see it's tied with a ribbon. It's like it's completed, it's finished. And that to me is like a completion of our story. So Christian and I are like the full completion of our story has happened, and now we are like on to the next adventure. And I've also been shown like a birthing energy that's around at the moment, and I'm sure people will, you know, if you've had been through childbirth, you know, at some point, or if like running a marathon, that's the same thing. At some point you hit a brick wall and you go, I can't do this. I cannot physically give birth to this baby or run another step. It just is not going to happen. But something happens, and that's kind of like the birthing energy. It takes over. It's like primal. It's just kind of rushes in and takes you over and gets you to birth the child, or to end up finishing the marathon. Like, that's what it feels like at the moment. It feels like the last push for me and for Christian to be getting that last puzzle piece. And I can't wait till this is done, because that's when our new adventure really begins. And I can see it. I've been shown so many things this week where we are so close to this happening, like being told to create space. So listen, if you've got something that you are like you've been working on for so long, that you are trying to get off the ground, or you're trying to birth, like I feel it's a really good time for this to happen. But part of it is like we talked last week about receiving the love, and this is all about really up leveling and upgrading, and the purity of the love. It really needs to be humming. But like start creating space. Like, get rid of anything that doesn't serve you, that's, you know, you've got clutter around you, you've got things that need doing, that like little things. It's almost like we've now got to the point where it's the little things that need to happen, just the final little things that need tweaks and things that need to happen, and then bang, we're going to get this big expansion. Yeah. And a lot of it actually is like learning to be happy with what you have now, like almost being you. A lot of the things that expansion happens, I'm being shown, it's like when you're like, oh, like, you know, life is really good now, I'm really happy with this, I'm really happy with that, I've got everything kind of, that's often when things can change. And it might be that they change, you know, if we're talking about expansion, we're talking about, it could be like something being detonated in your life. And I mean, you know, I'm not expecting an easy ride on this next bit of the adventure at all. But I feel I'm equipped with everything I need now. And I'm actually starting this course this week. It's going to be a 12-week course where I'm actually making myself more visible. And I'm really working on now. Obviously, Christian and I have been working on this for many years between us, but this is when what we've achieved, and what we've both managed to achieve in self-healing and transformation, but what the power of love can do, like what the power of unconditional love can do between two people, two energies, and that is going to impact on a much bigger scale. So our personal story becomes something that other people can take what they want from. So instead of me being there, so this is just clicking, instead of me being out there in the public eye searching for my brother, pleading, you know, desperate to find him, scattering my energy, following all the red herrings, being emotionally bleh, you know. Now it's going to be, when I go back into the public eye on a bigger scale, I am going to be very focused. My energy is going to be one of unconditional love, of joy, of completion. You know, I've got Christian there with me. We have that completely unconditional love between us, which has like, it's like at the, I do feel it 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 could get higher because there's always expansion and growth going on all the time. That's what we're here for. But it does feel like now it's at the level now where it's going to be able to reach so much more, and the purpose of all of this. And Rebecca's book, The Star Seeds, often I kind of need to quickly explain star seeds maybe, but we've all maybe if you don't feel you naturally belong on this earth, that you feel like this isn't really your home, that you're always a bit different from your family, you're always a bit different from what everybody's expecting you to be, it's quite likely that you are what is termed a star seed, and you've actually come here to earth to for a purpose. And a lot of that will be your personal healing and your personal journey that then moves out into your bigger purpose to help raise consciousness all over the planet. And if I've lost you there, I do apologize, but that's what Christian and I and our journey has all been about. And it's actually a relief to understand that and to use the energy of that. So do I have to say anything else? Oh yeah, there was one thing. So it's really actually this book is lovely. It's called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. It's actually written by a lady called Annie Keegan, and it's a book that I got very early on, and it talks about, so Annie's brother died, and this is her talking about how he proved to her that there's life after death. And I must reread this. It's a really short book, and I can't really remember very much of it, but I again was going through books and this jumped out this week, and I opened the page and it actually says it's about Annie talking to her mum, and her mum never really believed her that she was communicating with her son, you know, the dead brother. And these 2 pages are essentially saying that Billy made something happen that proved to his mum that the siblings were talking to each other. So I'm just going to take that as more evidence that something big is going to happen imminently between Christian and I, and this I suppose to I don't want to say prove, because I think people are going to take what they want out of our story, but it would be really nice that I've been banging on for years about talking to Christian and our relationship, but oh my goodness, it would be so wonderful to like receive his photographs and put a completion on our story, and to then be able to share the story with everybody, and to really see that I had this vision this week about weary travelers. Like, there's so many people who are weary travelers in life at the moment. They're carrying on far too much of the collective fear. They're not vibrating and their energy is so low. They'll look at Christian and I and our story and dismiss it, or, you know, I'm expecting a mixed response, obviously. But that's why we're doing this. Almost it's got to the point where I don't care anymore what people think of me. Christian never cared anyway, and he actually through the process has cared about what people think once his truths have started to come out. But we have both got to a point now where we know why we're doing this, and we have a bigger purpose. So essentially we're finding the weary travelers who are just tired of this life, or overcome or lost in this life, and we want to tell a story that empowers and gives some illumination and asks people to go on a daring adventure. You know, just remember there's only courage that's needed to go from being lost into being found, like to really know who you are and uncover all that love and light and really be a beacon for other people as well. So yeah, I think that is all I need to say. Let me just see. Next week, we do actually have, I've got a guest who's coming on. We've actually pre-recorded it. So we recorded it a few days ago, and it's quite an extraordinary tale, and how I met the guest and the story that they have to talk about. They actually, I've got a bit of time here now, so I'm going to talk about it because they have a similar story to Christian and I. And there was mention of the term twin flame to denote the connection that they have. So when the concept of a twin flame is like you're joined together, and when they go missing or apart, or you're not with them, you don't feel whole, like life isn't you're just not yourself, you're not your whole self when they're not around. And because that happened this week, I was like, oh, twin flame, that sounds interesting. And I actually looked back in my books to another one of Rebecca's books called Light is the New Black. And when I was doing the love and forgiveness work with Christian, and I say we did that over 4 sessions, but through the next 2 years, we were working on different layers of understanding, and it got deeper and deeper and deeper. So that was just our sort of preliminary month of work. But as you know, healing, you go deeper and deeper with layers and layers. But anyway, while I was doing that work, I randomly looked through this book, and I came to a page. It says, she left the old story behind her and stepped into a new once upon a time. And it says here, so she's actually, Rebecca's talking about soulmates, but it's the same thing. So soulmates are the people who spur on your growth like no other. Souls who agree prior to this life to play a vital role in our expansion. When meeting a soulmate, you may experience a sense of remembering or familiarity. Soulmate relationships are not necessarily all sunshine and roses. In fact, more often than not, they can be extremely difficult, as sometimes, in order for us to grow, we need to experience pain. So, you know, if there's somebody in your life that you've lost, whether temporarily or you feel permanently, i.e. they've passed over onto the other side, please know that like it's all happening for your growth and for your expansion, and it's something that you've agreed with them before you came into this life. I truly believe that. I mean, it might be that that's a difficult thing to hear for some people, but having been through this process for years, I totally believe that. And you know, Christian and I, we've done this dance all the way through our lives, and you know, we would definitely have been through this to help each other grow and expand, and in turn we're telling our story to help the audience, whoever wants to listen, whoever feels it's ready, they're ready to listen. And it might be you're not ready to listen and you react against what we have to say so much, but also know that if you're reacting really badly, it's a lesson that you actually really need to hear, unfortunately. But anyway, look, enjoy next week's pre-recorded session with Kerry and Michael, and I will see you the week after that. So yeah, the episode will be out just as normal. It's just I have a week off. Yay. Okay, lots of love, and We'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for listening to The Finder of Lost Things. I think we've been triggered so long and so hard by COVID, and it's going to carry on. People are getting used to stillness, and they're getting used to more solitude, but how do you use that time for the highest good? This process that we're going to explore will bring back the joy and purpose to life. That wholeness, you know, that sort of harmony and flow and togetherness. People are really ready to find their lost parts now. You can find me at hannahvelten.online.